All right. It's a good day. And that's because you know why? It's the second episode of the Resilient Podcast. Last time Josh and I shot the pilot of this podcast, we introduced ourselves. We talked a little bit about our backgrounds. We talked about some of the current situations that we're dealing with. And, this is the second episode. And I look forward to the episode after this one, the episode after that one. I do want to take this time right now, and I was talking to Josh about this earlier today, to thank everyone that's reached out to me in the last week or so to congratulate me and Josh about this podcast. Thank you so much. I do appreciate you guys, checking in and listening to it. I haven't been able to check any of the analytics or results. I'll be completely honest. I haven't had the time to get to that. I haven't even actually saw the episode myself on YouTube. I've seen parts of it. It's just been very busy. I do have a photo shoot coming up that I'm going to share with you guys later on in this episode. And I also have a lot of things going on. And tomorrow, I just happen to have a very big corporate visit at a Bloomingdale's store in New York City with the Dolce & Gabbana corporate team. For those of you that may not know, I am a brand ambassador. I'll share some of that information with you guys throughout the course of these episodes. But yes, I am actually a brand ambassador for Dolce & Gabbana Beauty. So what that means is I am a promoter and someone who helps with the marketing and sales efforts for Dolce & Gabbana Beauty fragrances. Now, that does not mean that you guys go into my inbox now and start asking me for free fragrance or discounts. I don't offer any of those things. But if you guys want to support an event that I do, if you're in New York City, whether it's Saks Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's flagship on Lexington Avenue, sometimes even Macy's or Nordstrom or whatever the case may be, I'll let you guys know in advance and you guys can come and support. But that's just a little bit about what I do. So I do have a big corporate visit tomorrow. That means that the Domenico Dolce, who's actually the Dolce part of Dolce & Gabbana, will be in town with some of the other Italian people from Italy. And they're just going to ask me a few questions about the brand. And they're going to ask me about the performance and what's selling and what's not selling and how are things going and how they can support me more on these events that I do for them throughout the year. So that's that. I have a lot on my plate. I'm sure Josh has a lot on his plate as well, too. But this is episode number 2. And we're going to make this very special. And I'm going to tell you guys exactly why in a few moments. But I wanted to just kind of summarize what we spoke about the last episode. So, again, Josh and I spoke a lot about our pasts, our present. We spoke a lot about our pretty much the things that Josh and I have a lot in common. And, we both love music. We're both Latino men, right? Even though Josh is half Italian, I'm fully Dominican, but, there's no such thing as full anything. We're all mixed with many things somewhat, some way. But, it's cool to have a half Puerto Rican, half Italian co-host from Chicago. Yep. But Josh and I, like I said, we have a lot in common. For starters, Josh and I both love music. I love music. Josh performs it. I used to play the guitar back in high school. Don't even know if I can still do that. Muscle memory is something very big. And I used to mess around with the piano a lot when I was younger. But I know Josh likes to play the guitar. For those of you who want to check out some of Josh's cover songs, follow Josh at his Instagram at Josh Lopez Music. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir. You got it right at that.
Yeah, Josh Lopez Music. So, just to listen to some of the songs that Josh covers. But, aside from music, Josh and I both love professional wrestling, mainly WWE. We're big WWE supporters. And, another thing about Josh and I is that we're both tourists. So I just wanted to put this out there. Sometimes people don't like to be put on blast, but, this episode is going to circulate around Josh, and you guys are going to see why. But, Josh's birthday's coming up. Josh, you're a Taurus, just like me, a May Taurus at that. I'm a little bit of a late Taurus. I'm almost a Gemini. I'm May 19th. But Josh's birthday is May, is it the 8th?
Close, 7th.
May 7th. So
Yep.
Josh's birthday is May 7th, and Josh is hitting a big milestone. And we'll get into that in a few minutes because I don't want to leak the age yet. I have some questions to ask Josh, and we'll find out how old Josh is actually going to turn. But yeah, Josh's birthday is coming up, and I was talking to Josh recently about a lot about what it is, resilience, reflection, self discovery, um, you know, self reflection, because I've noticed that this year, for me especially, it's been a lot on self reflection. I've been self reflecting a little bit in the last year and a half over a previous breakup that I had. And this breakup was in 2020. And my ex and I were pretty close, despite the fact that we broke up in 2020, but we remained friends for 3 years. And we kind of, stopped talking and communicating a little bit after um, the summer last year, to be exact, around October of 2023. And, at that time, I was already in a relationship with my recent ex, who we just broke up in March. And, during that time that I was with my new girlfriend, I started to take time to reflect a lot on, what happened in my past relationship. What were the things that I could have done better? What are the things that I did wrong and how I learned from them? And even with this recent breakup, I found myself thinking more about self reflection. At the end of the last year, December, this is when my ex girlfriend and I started to have issues. I didn't know that this was going to be the beginning of the end. Um, we spent Christmas together. I spoke to her about a few things that were on my mind, and I guess it just didn't sit well with her. And long story short, we were supposed to spend New Year's together, and we weren't able to spend New Year's together. And that broke my heart because I said to myself, "This is our first New Year's. I haven't spent New Year's with someone in the last 3 years, and I don't know what's going to happen now." So when I realized that we weren't going to spend New Year together, I didn't want to spend New Year alone, even though I did. But I also didn't want to spend it at home in New York. I've been spending New Year's for the last few years away from home, and I love that because honestly, and I've been spending it alone for the most part. I haven't spent a New Year's with anyone, to be exact, in maybe a little bit over 5 years or so. And it's something that it's good and it's bad at the same time, because if you're with someone, if you love someone, you don't want to enter the new year without them. But if you're by yourself, and you're starting the new year by yourself, I think it's a good way to kind of start, really, planning like how you want to enter this new year, especially because you're by yourself. And again, it gives you the time to self reflect. So when I started New Year's this year with my ex girlfriend, we were still together at the time. Um, I called her before the ball dropped. We spoke on the phone. I apologized for some of the things that were said and done before the year was over. And when the ball dropped, I said to her, "Let's say a prayer together." So I've never done that before. I've never prayed with a significant other during the new year, and I thought that it was good for me to do that. It was something I wanted to try, something different, because one, I really, 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 really wanted to make this relationship work very hard. And I thought that if she saw, oh wow, he wants to pray, to start the new year, I thought that that would actually be something that would make her feel good about me, right? Despite the fact we ended up, January, February was kind of like, the beginning of the end. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was a lot of distance. There was a lot of silence. And I had to start mentally preparing myself for what I thought, and at the same time, what I knew was bound to happen. And I'll be honest, when it finally happened, the first few days, I was like, am I okay? And I said to myself, maybe, maybe not. But then it started to hit me a little bit after, like maybe about a week or two after, it started to hit me really bad. And I immediately started self-reflecting. And, through therapy, I was able to speak to my therapist. And my therapist said to me, "What have you been self-reflecting on?" And I was like, "It's pretty much what I've been self-reflecting on for a while now. How can I be a better person? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What bothers me? What doesn't bother me? What are the things that make me happy? What are the things that make me sad? What are the things that I could work on? What are the words that I use in my language that I can change, moving forward? If I use a word, for example, if I refer to something as garbage and, it may come across as very, vulgar to people or just disrespectful, how do I change the word garbage and say something like, a mess, or something like that,
Right.
like that. So self-reflection is something I've been doing. I remember Josh telling you earlier this year when I went to Tampa because I wasn't able to make it out to the Royal Rumble, which took place in St. Petersburg, but I was able to make it out to that Monday Night Raw the Monday following. So I went to Monday Night Raw. It was in Tampa, Florida, one of my favorite places in the world. Actually, this is where I met Josh at WrestleMania 37 at Raymond James, but I was at the Amalie Arena for Monday Night Raw. And, I think it was the day after Monday Night Raw, I was on a balcony at the Marriott, JW Marriott, my favorite hotel in Tampa. And I had a bottle of Terramana on the balcony and I was about to crack it open. But before I did that, I said to myself, you know what? Right now, I'm not in the best position. Right now, I'm in Tampa and my girlfriend is back home in Philly. And even though I'm communicating with her, even though I'm talking to her a little bit about my trip, I don't like where I am with her right now. I don't like where we stand. How can I make things better? What can I say to her every time I talk to her? And what can I say to her when I come back from my trip? That's what I was thinking about. So I'm not sure if she's ever going to see any of these episodes or even listen to any of these episodes, but I hope that someday she is able to listen to one of these episodes at least and understand that um, I have felt a lot of change in me since our breakup, even before our breakup. And I'm working to be my very best. And it's not just for her, it's not just for anyone else, but it's mainly for me. Because I will say this, Josh, if you reflect back from like 10 years, right, from 10 years ago, who I was 10 years and who I am now, I'm much wiser, I'm much more calmer, I'm much more different. I'm a little bit more understanding. And, I don't like when people say the word I'm humble because I feel like humble is something that you don't talk about being. I think it's just something that you just show people that you're humble, People can tell if you're humble or not, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like I've humbled a lot, especially through experiences, especially through the things that have been happening in my life. Um, I'll open up to you guys soon and let you guys know what's going on with me physically. But some of the things that have humbled me in the last few years is my grandmother's death. My grandmother passed away in 2019 from dementia. My grandmother was the most important person in the world to me. And I'll dedicate an episode just to her one day. Then, unfortunately, in 2021, I lost my uncle to diabetes. Diabetes is something very dear and near to me, and I'll explain to you guys why when the time is right. And he had a very long battle with diabetes. He was 64, I want to say 62, actually. He wasn't that old. And, finally everything gave up on him. He was a veteran. He was recovering. He had had his leg amputated because of diabetes. He had lost his vision because of the diabetes, and he was getting, he was getting his eyes replaced at the VA, and he was even in the process of, you know, walking with a prosthetic leg, but then eventually they were going to help him like get a leg again. And his kidneys had failed him, everything had failed him. He had just had a kidney transplant, and they said that with that transplant he was going to be able to live longer. Unfortunately, my uncle didn't live long at all. My uncle probably lived a year after that kidney transplant. And then, unfortunately, my aunt, who is his sister and my mother's sister, because this is all my mom's family. This is my mom's mom, this is my mom's brother, her older brother, and this is her older sister. My aunt passed away a year later, my uncle's death anniversary. And she died from heartbreak syndrome, and that is real. And we'll talk about heartbreak syndrome one day. And that crushed me. To have two family members back to back, and previously my grandmother a year and a half before. I feel like every time somebody dies, Josh, somebody that's close to us, or just someone in general that we knew of, it kind of hits home, and it makes me appreciate life a little more. Because even though some of these people that are dying are older and they lived a very long life and whatnot, it's still someone that was a loved one to someone. You know what I'm saying? And we're never going to see them again. We're never going to hear them again. All we have is the memories. So this episode, I want to dedicate it to just doing right by people and loving everyone. There's something that I share with all the time, and it's a quote from a friend of mine out in WWE, and you may know who he is, and a lot of people know him by Scrap Daddy, AP, but his name is Adam Pierce. And Adam dedicates his time every day on Twitter to go on there, and Facebook and Instagram, to say love somebody today.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I met Adam in person, face to face, was last year, WrestleMania. I believe it was WrestleMania night 1 or night 2 at the after party. This was at the LA Live Marriott. The JW Marriott in Los Angeles. And he walks up, and I see him, and I looked right at him, and I stopped him, and I said to him, Adam, love somebody today. And he looked at me, and he knew exactly who I was, because he's noticed how many times I've retweeted that quote from him. And he shook my hand, and then he patted me on the shoulder, and he said, every day, to respond to me saying love somebody today. He said every day. And he was like, nice to see you, my friend. And he walked away. So, folks, life is short. Things happen. And the fact of the matter is, today is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised. 5 minutes from now is not promised. So please do right by people. Love everyone. Respect everyone. Respect yourself mainly. And please, 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 folks, just bring more love and embrace people as much as you can. And, don't be on bad terms with people. Don't hate anyone. Don't be on bad terms with anyone. Try to fix it. And that's pretty much all I can say to you guys right now. So moving on, I wanted to let you guys know that it has been now a month now since WrestleMania 40th. And I have this amazing project coming up. So this project is going to be in Philadelphia, and I am gathering a group of friends together and a few folks together from a previous project I did, and we're recapping with everyone about WrestleMania 40. And we're going to ask everyone fun questions like, it's been a month since WrestleMania. How do you guys feel about WrestleMania? How do you feel about Cody Rhodes being your champion? How do you feel about Damian Priest being your champion? There's been some changes. Unfortunately, Rhea Ripley, Josh, as you may know, had to relinquish her title because it turns out she was injured. And Rhea's going to be out for quite some time. We don't know exactly how long. And, she had to relinquish her belt. And we have a new champion. We have a new champion in the man, Becky Lynch. And I love Becky Lynch, and I think it's cool that Becky's champion. But I could just imagine if Rhea never had to relinquish her title, what would Becky be doing with herself these days? Besides the fact that, she's just had that match with with Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, where Rhea successfully retained. And Becky is on a book tour right now, and she's got that book out there. And I haven't read it yet. There is someone that reached out to me to tell me that they actually have an extra copy for me. So I look forward to that. And hopefully, one of these days I can actually have Becky herself, sign it for me. So I look forward to this project. This project is something that I am putting together collectively with some folks and my photographer, Diego. And listen, I've been on a new journey. I've been doing a lot of community engagement stuff, and I love it. And I think it's great. And I'm going to continue with that. And I've also been writing, like I mentioned in the first episode, I've been writing something I've never done before. I'm trying to channel a lot of these emotions and a lot of these things that are happening to me, trying to channel into something positive, So the reason why this podcast is even in existence is because I am trying to spread positivity out to the world. And if there's someone out there that can relate to what we are talking about and or what we're discussing or what we're going through and stuff like that, listen, I'm just here to listen. I'm here to guide. I'm here to give advice and also learn from people as well too. The Resilience Podcast is not just for me and Josh to give advice to people, but for people that will be coming on this podcast in the near future. They can share with us whatever wisdom they may want to share with us, and I'm open to that. I think learning is something that you should do every day. I take pride in admitting that I learn from everything. I learn from older adults, like older people, senior citizens. I learn from kids. I learn from teenagers. I learn from my peers. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with learning from people. You never know everything, and it's okay to learn from others. I've definitely learned. My last relationship, I learned a lot. I only dated my ex-girlfriend for 6 months, but I learned a lot from her perspective, from her background. She's comes from the military. She lives in Philadelphia. She was raised in an environment similar to mine's. So I was able to learn how she dealt with a lot of stuff. And my relationship even prior to that, I learned a lot. I feel like that relationship, my ex constantly had a mirror up in my face to show me who I was. And, when I decided to finally look into that mirror, Josh didn't like who I saw. I
Right.
didn't like the man I saw. I was really disgusted. Um, and because of that, I started to say to myself, you know, I need to start focusing on changing my ways. I need to start doing better. I need to start pouring more love into myself, more love into the world, letting go of this hate, letting go of all this anger, letting go of all this resentment that I have over people and things that I can never really change. Um, and I need to start being a better person, for myself, for my grandmother who made so many sacrifices, for this family, for me. If it wasn't for my grandmother, I wouldn't be here today, and I got to be thankful for that. And I got to count my blessings. And, you know, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. And I'm going to continue to learn. And I'm proud of that. So, um, moving on, today is a special day. And I'll tell you why. Again, it's the second episode, but it's special. It's a special episode. I have a guest who's on this show today, and I'm going to be asking them some questions about resilience. And this guest, if anybody is wondering, is none other than my co-host, Joshie Lopez.
Yes. Yeet. Yeet.
So I've known Joshie for about 3.5 years, I want to say, but that doesn't mean anything. I still don't know Joshie too well. I've only spoken to Josh since 2021, since we met, a pocket full of times, and it's never enough. Even though I do consider Josh like a brother from another mother, and even though I have a lot of love, admiration, and respect for Josh, still don't really know who he is, and vice versa. He still doesn't know who I am. This podcast will pretty much teach each other who we are, and what better way to learn from Josh than by asking him some questions? So I wanted to take this time right now to ask Josh a series of questions and see where his head is at with a lot of things. So let's get started. First question I have for Josh. So, Josh, as we touch on your life changing journey of losing weight and getting closer to God, what sparked this transformation for you?
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, May 2nd will be the 1 year anniversary where I sprained my ankle right before my birthday, helping my dad out on his food delivery route. And it was really that moment where it was kind of a wake up call for me that I need to make a lot of changes in my life. Like I was mentioning on last week's episode, I I was just going through the worst string of luck. I lost my job. I got furloughed. I was losing my apartment. I was feeling sick of how I got myself to where I was health wise, and just the way it looked and the way I felt about myself. And May 2nd, I accidentally sprained my ankle, and it almost got fractured. That's how bad it was. Just
Wow.
tripping over a curb, and I was sitting on a recliner at my old apartment, and I was rewatching The Last Dance. For those who know me, I wear my heart on its sleeve for the fact that I'm from Chicago, and Michael Jordan, outside of CM Punk, is probably my biggest like idol in life. It's Michael Jordan, and getting to rewatch The Last Dance really opened my eyes on a lot of different things that I needed to change, not just how I am appearance wise, but how I see myself within too. So, a couple months, not a couple months, but a couple weeks later, I moved into this apartment that I'm at now. I'm here at my Wellis house. I've been very grateful to reconnect with my dad's side of the family, which I haven't had much time to do so during the pandemic, and I was at my other place at the time. So it's been very, very rewarding. So really, when I sprained my ankle, Rob, is really like it was really a sign from God that I needed to switch things up, and I needed to acknowledge myself, and I needed to do a whole loop around. And it really is that Last Dance documentary that really inspired me, because I was watching how Michael Jordan went and got himself to the point where in his head that he had to remind himself that he's undeniable, and the work ethic and drive that he put into his craft. I already know that I had that with what I do within my work, but I wasn't applying that same work ethic on myself.
Mm.
It's one thing to have work ethic and doing a gazillion transcripts and having a podcast for over 8 years and stuff like that. But what are you doing for yourself? You know, and really, man, it's crazy. Think about it now. It's been almost a full year since I started this journey, man. It's been interesting.
I think it's the first time that you share that with me. I could be wrong. The whole, spraining your ankle part. But it's very interesting that when you sprain your ankle, that's one of the main things you thought about was, maybe I should lose some weight. Um, I remember something similar happening to someone that I knew. Can't really remember who exactly, but they pretty much kind of went through the same situation. And they said, like, this is a sign that I have to lose weight, you know? And I remember my brother, I believe it was last year, and my brother was a little bit overweight. Well, he's a very big dude. And this is my eldest sibling. And he fell down the stairs. I don't know if it was like during the snow, if it was during the rain, and it motivated him to want to get surgery to lose weight. He hasn't started the process yet, but he says he hasn't been the same since that fall. But it was one of the things that I remember hearing him talk about was, I need to lose weight. And normally sometimes people would just think about, oh, I need to heal, I need to heal. But when someone starts to think about drastically changing, you know, their appearance over an injury, just the way they feel. Um, Sometimes they think about it as, protection for the next time it happens, if it ever happens again, God forbid, or to prevent it from happening again. And I think in your case, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably looked at it from a safety measure, like, listen, I got to take it easy. I got to lose some weight so that this doesn't happen to me ever again. You know, twisting your ankle could really hurt. I've twisted my ankle a few times, and I actually have had moments where my ankle was sprained, and just dealing with walking around, on that leg that has been sprained,
Yeah.
it could be a lot. It could be a lot. So, I'm really, really surprised with that information you just shared, and I think it's great. Um, Question number two, and this is going to be a good one. So we discussed Josh's birthday coming up, but we didn't say how old Josh is. So I'm about to reveal Josh's age right now. So Josh, turning 30 is a significant milestone. I remember when I would turn 30, I kept thinking to myself, did I complete what I needed to complete? Am I satisfied with life? Am I where I want to be? And turning 30 is special because you only turn 30 once, and it's like I tell people, once you turn 18, 20 matters, but not as much. 21 is what really matters. And then, they say 25, but 30, once 30 hits, it doesn't start to matter until after 40 and 50 and 60 and 70 and 80,
Mm.
So, turning 30 is big. And like I said, it's a significant milestone. And I just want to ask you, how do you feel about reaching this point in your life? And what goals do you have for the next decade?
Well, I can say this confidently, and I can think back about the conversation we had earlier today, and just think about where I am at right now in my life. Right now, I've never been more assured of who I am than where I'm at right now, and I think that's a good sign, honestly. Obviously, this transformation journey has been playing a big part of that and rediscovering myself, but also knowing that in a lot of ways, if I could use like a wrestling term here, I've been paying my dues in a way with the amount of time I spent on working in the wrestling media, what I've done. But more importantly, on a personal level, I just feel like right now that I'm more reassured of who I am. I'm proud of the man that I'm becoming. I'm proud of the stuff that I've been able to overcome and adapt during my upbringing. I'm a product of divorce. I've had a lot of important people in my life lie to me, and I've got to the point in my life where um, I had to protect my peace. And one thing that I'm very proud of is the fact that I am straight edge. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. I I, I don't drink. Um, and I'm very mature for my age, and I'm very grounded in the way I carry myself. And trust me, man, life tests you. Have there been times where I wanted to start drinking and have pity for myself and do these other things to fit in with people? Sure, it's run through my mind, but I know for myself and what I want to do with this life, I can't fall down that road, because if I do, I'll never see through what I want to do with my life. And right now, personally, in another way, I also feel stuck. I feel stuck with where I'm in my living environment. Me and you have had this conversation before. I kind of at my wits end of living here in Chicago, and it's not anything negative towards my family. I love them uh, dearly. I really do, but I'm in a different place. My older sister Alex lives with her girlfriend in California. My dad's off in a new marriage. My mom is with a new boyfriend at the old house that I was raised in. My grandparents are getting older. Um, I have nothing left for me in Chicago. So I had this conversation with my dad a couple months ago, and I was upfront with him. And this is going to be my last year here in Chicago, and I'm planning to move to Florida. That's really where my head's at right now, as I'm heading into this next chapter, and that's really where my mindset's right now. As far as what could come with the future with the podcast and wrestling stuff, I'm gonna leave that up to God's hands. But really, right now, my focus is on keeping myself happy and getting myself out of Chicago.
Yeah, man, that was pretty deep. You know, um, I really feel you on the part where you talk about, that you feel like you've been tested at times, and you've never given in to the entertainment of turning to substance use or alcohol.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's fair to say that we all know someone that was either an alcoholic, a drug addict. Um, I remember saying this to myself the other day, and I don't know where I was. I was walking somewhere, And I remember saying, and I think it's because I live here in New York, so I was in the train station, and I think I saw like a baggie of like cocaine or whatever it was on the floor, and I literally said to myself, "Man, I wish that we live in a world that was drug free. Like there was
Right.
no such thing as drugs. Like the word drug would not even exist. You know, we've lost so many people, and there's currently people right now dealing with that addiction. A few years ago, when I started um, the experience and opportunity to work with Victor, who I mentioned in the first podcast, Victor Melgar. Shout out to him again. Um, reason why I started working with Victor is because Victor said to me, "Listen, one of the main reasons why I started a CBD brand is because I want to help people alleviate, symptoms, from drug abuse, from cancer, from people in recovery."
Right.
And I want to say about about a year working into it with Victor, I went to California for the first time. I finally visited California, and when I visited California, Victor had just came out with new formulas, and one of the formulas that Victor came out with was called addiction. And everybody was like, "What does this help with? What kind of addiction?" And Victor said, here in Bakersfield, where he lived at the time, Bakersfield, California, he says there's a high rate of people on opioids, and I'm trying to get less people on opioids. So with this new formula that I created, hopefully, and it was CBD, based, he said, hopefully I can help people, overcome addiction, and not just opioids addiction, but all types of addictions, other drugs,
Right.
from drinking alcohol and whatnot. And I remember I had like a friend of mine who tried the product, someone who was like severely, severely into like vaping and smoking cigarettes and this and that and whatnot. And I heard this person say how they felt, that they felt better, that they felt that they were recovering. And this was a young person at that. And when asked this person his age, and he told me how old he was, I was like, man,
Yeah.
20 something years old, just barely turned 20 something. And you already have an addiction, you know and I'm not here looking at this person trying to be judgmental. I'm only looking at this person and thinking to myself, what could he be going through? What could happen? And sometimes people say things like, oh, it's not an addiction, it's just people just love to people have bad habits, and I say, look, there's some truth to that. Sometimes people only drink and smoke because it's just a bad habit. They see people doing it and they want to do it as well. But sometimes when people do it excessively, there's a reason behind that.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a saint. Thank God I'm not a drug person either. I don't like smoking marijuana. I don't know what cocaine is and crack and heroin and all that stuff. Never touched it, and I hope I never do. I pray to God. But I do like to drink. And, sometimes I like to drink my Terramana, only because it's the best tequila out there. Gluten free, no sugar, and no carbs. But I also like to drink my whiskey. I also like to drink my, my cocktails once in a while, occasionally, very occasionally, rarely a beer or so. But and of course wine. I love drinking wine. But if there's a day that I can minimize that to very, very little, and not even hard liquor, I could probably still stick to the tequila, maybe once in a while, a nice shot of Terramana to celebrate something, and a nice glass of wine, especially dry red Cabernet, which is my favorite because it has a lot of antioxidants. I hope I can get to that point. Overall, if one day I could just stop drinking, period, I think that would be great. And, I'm glad to hear that you're straight edge. I don't know that many people that are. Um, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And, keep it that way. And, you know, yeah, that response to my second question was pretty deep, and it touched me. Um, so now that we discussed that, I want to move on to another question. And this question from me to you is, what lessons have you learned from your experiences with toxic relationships, and how have they shaped your approach to future connections?
Well, my stance towards toxic relationships stems back from my childhood because I come from a broken home and my parents got divorced. And my parents, I have very young parents. My mom had me when she was 17. My dad had me right before he turned 20. And my mom suffers with bipolar syndrome. Um, and my dad's not a saint. He's made a lot of positive changes over the years, but when you got a Taurus and a Gemini as your parents, it's a ticking time bomb, basically.
Oh,
So um, I saw what toxic is. I saw what relationships are not supposed to be. So that's also another reason why I'm straight edge. It's another reason why I carry myself the way I am in the when it comes to independence and seeing people's actions as opposed to what people tell me.
mhm.
Um, Toxic relationships, it's hard for people that don't have self awareness or self respect at the end of the day.
I agree.
I, I'm coming out of a 8 year situationship right now with this chick, and at the end of the day, I have enough self respect to understand that when somebody's trying to insult their pride, when this it's the same person that's one broken my heart, rubbed it in my face that we can't be together for excuse for a guy that's 8 years older than her, and constantly puts me in a position where I am in the wrong and I'm doing this and I'm doing that when all in all I've been her friend the entire time, which is what she claimed that she wanted when she broke my heart, right? And out of the goodness of my heart and how I am as a person and knowing how much I cared about her, and when I first met her, she was a recovering addict and I helped her during that time. Little known that she forgets things like that when I was there for her when she really needed it at her lowest part of her life, you know? And I don't want to get emotional about it because it's been really on my heart recently with this whole situation, but it's like toxic relationship stems to the point where you start losing your own self respect. So if you're in that situation and you know you're at the point of no return, please do yourself a favor and forgive yourself. That's the only way you're going to heal from it. Like I said last week, you got to heal from it. It could be from grief, it could be from bad relationships. You have to forgive yourself.
Appreciate that, man. I feel like the more questions I ask, the deeper it's gonna get. And you know, you mentioned that you're straight edge because of you know what you saw in your parents. And I have a friend of mine who I hope I get the chance to interview one day. And you know who this is? His name is Justin from the Wrestling Classic. And when Justin and I first connected, and I was actually a guest on his podcast. I think it's called a classic something conversation with the classic, right? Casual conversation with the classic. We shot this interview. It was myself, Justin interviewed me, and his co-host Dan, who's a very good dude who I admire. Shout out to Dan. And um, I met Dan in Dallas. This is when we were getting ready for WrestleMania. So I went out to the WrestleMania on sale party in Dallas. This was November 2021 because WrestleMania was in April 2022. And I spoke with Dan about a few things. And I said to Dan, I love the Wrestling Classic, man. Justin's a cool dude. And, this is what I love about professional wrestling. It connects people with each other. And I was like, Justin's got a lot of stuff going on for him, and I really appreciate it. And same thing with you. And it's good to know that you and him know each other. They know each other because they're Canada boys. They're from Canada.
Right.
And Dan goes to me, yeah, man. The Wrestling Classic is great. And the next thing he says to me is, if you want, maybe you could be a guest on the podcast one day. And I said, me? All he does is interview like professional wrestlers and celebrities. I'm nowhere near that level yet. It's like, nah, man, we could definitely have a conversation with you. And Dan discussed with me that one of the reasons why is because he kind of liked my story, like a little bit I shared with him, and he felt like I had a lot to say and a lot to offer and a lot of input and insight. That really made me feel good, because when people listen to your story and they feel like they want to hear more, it's a good thing, right? So fast forward, we finally have this conversation, and it's the first time that I get to speak to Justin. And podcast interview went great. After the conversation, of course, sometimes you stay on the phone to talk to people, right? Just to talk a little bit about what just happened. And Justin says to me, "Hey, man, I want to talk to you about something, and hopefully we can talk about this soon." And he talks about mental health. He talks about alcohol addiction and, being raised by parents that had that issue. And the first thing I say to myself is, wow, this guy went through that stuff. Because you just never know who's going through what, Josh,
Yeah.
We paint this, people say, oh, people paint this facade of who they are. And sometimes it's like, it's not even that. People don't actually go online and just say, hey, my name is Bob and I am a product of rape and, my parents are alcoholics. Nobody really does that. It's very rare.
Right.
Especially when you're out there, promoting yourself and your brand and your craft and your talents. And, I'm over here thinking, and that's the problem that most of us sometimes, and it's happened to me a lot, people paint this facade of us. And to them, it kind of seems like we live a perfect life. And the minute we start to tell them about our problems, they're like, you have problems? Wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a human being. My life is not perfect. I didn't come from the best upbringing. And that's like a stigmatization where I want to talk about someday, where people think that just because you're famous or you're rich or you're popular or you're successful, that you don't have issues in your life. People have told me in the past, Rob, you're one of the most successful people I've ever met. Your story is beautiful. And I tell people thanks. And they say, you don't seem like so appreciative of my message. And I'm like, no, trust me, I appreciate it. I'm not acting crazy because, you just said something to me that really means a lot to me. But I say to people, I do my best. And, there's a story behind why I do the things that I do. There's a story why I created the Resilience Podcast. There's a story why, we are who we are and why we do the things we do. And and all we can do is just make the best out of things.
Right.
There's people in this world who unfortunately don't receive too much love, too much affection, too much attention from parents, from relatives, and I feel like all that stuff stems at home. Everything starts at home, Josh. Everything starts at home. Where you learn to first speak, it should be home. Where you learn, your first, your first responsibility in life, it should be home. Whether it's learn how to wash the dishes, learn how to, take out the trash,
Right.
learn how to, help mom peel the potatoes, like my mom used to do with my older siblings. She would make my older siblings, have certain things ready for her by the time she got home from work. All that stuff comes from home. School, for those that do go to school and not have, homeschool, school is supposed to teach you some of the other basics. But, by the time you go to school, you should at least know how to communicate, how to talk to people, how to express your emotions. And, some of the issues that we're seeing nowadays is a lot of kids are doing a lot of things. That's crazy. We have kids bringing guns into schools. I mean, this is not new. This is something that's been happening, but It's been happening more than ever. And by the time they do a background check and try to find out what happened or the backstory of why this kid did what they did, while everybody's too busy passing judgment and getting crazy, turns out that the kid didn't get enough love, or the kid didn't get enough affection, or the kid saw the parents fighting at home, or the kid overheard one of the parents when they whipped the actual gun saying they were going to kill somebody because that person hurt them or that person broke their heart or whatever. So now a child goes through a similar situation in school. They're probably getting picked on. They're probably getting bullied, or the teacher's being rough on them. And now they go back home and they think about, oh, I don't like how this teacher talked to me, or I don't like how my friend Jimmy broke my heart today. And, they don't want to share his Legos with me. And now this kid comes and brings this gun to school. I know what it feels like to not have the most love and affection coming from home.
Right.
I am proud of myself to the fact that I'm not out there today hurting people, stealing, robbing banks, hurting people, hurting children, mugging people in the train station, or all this other stuff that's going on in the world. I'm glad I'm not doing those things. And even though I wasn't able to receive some of that love and affection from home, I thank God for placing people in my life to kind of replace that love that I didn't get from my parents and relatives, such as, family, friends, neighbors from across the street, or just people that saw something in me and knew that I was a child with no direction and felt like it was their purpose to teach me something. Some of these folks are still around, and I try to thank them as much as I can every single chance I get. Some of these folks have now passed on. Some of them are no longer with us. And I will forever remember who they were to me, what they did for me, what they taught me. And I realized that as I got older, I wanted to do the same thing. If there's someone out there, a child, an adult, a teenager, who I can resonate with, I would like to speak to them. I would like to talk to them. I would like to show them that you don't have to be angry all the time, that you don't have to carry resentment in your heart,
Right.
that you have to be in pain all the time. And I've been successful with talking to some of these people. Some of these people have actually learned from me, and some of these people are actually doing much better with themselves. I've had a few people talk to me in the past and as of recent about committing suicide. It makes me say to myself, why me? Why are they coming to me? Sometimes these people are coming to me to talk to me about committing suicide when I'm not even feeling my best.
Right.
But there's something about me that, despite the fact of what I could be going through, I could have had a rough day at work. I could have had a very bad day with a relative or something. I still find it in me to reach out to that person and say, I'm here. You're not alone. Don't do it. Let's talk about it. And I'm proud of myself for that,
You should be.
And, one of the things I've learned about that also is that while I am educating these people and I'm helping these people, pretty much saving them from doing the unthinkable, I kind of start teaching myself things. And it's crazy, Josh, because in life, sometimes we're going to hear ourselves giving advice to people. And you know how they say sometimes we don't take our own advice, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we heard what we said, or sometimes we think about the conversation and we say to ourselves, I told this person that they are the greatest person ever. Have I ever said that to myself? Have I ever applied that to myself? And sometimes I say to myself, if I applied these things that I share with others to myself on a constant basis, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing for me? So, this is a very sensitive topic, and this is why I said what I just said. And we're going to talk way more about this as the time goes by. I don't want to fall too much off topic here.
Right.
Yeah, I want to stay on Messenger, but thank you for sharing that with me. This, I feel like I can learn a lot from you just by listening to your responses,
I appreciate that, bro.
And I think you're heaven sent. I believe that there's a reason why you're in my life. There's a reason why you're a co-host of this podcast with me. And I think I chose the right person. I think I hit the lottery with you, and I look forward to the conversations that we're going to have outside of the podcast. Those are the conversations that are going to matter the most to me. You know, things that we could think about later on in life when we're old and gray. You know.
Right.
So, in regards to that, everything that we just spoke about,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you during all of these challenges that we've been talking about, how do you stay motivated and focused on your personal growth journey?
Well, I think that if I fell into my feelings all the time and just succumb to what my upbringing was, I probably wouldn't be here anymore, if I'm being honest with you. And just being completely transparent, I really got to thank professional wrestling for being an escape for me. Because even through the stuff with Lauren, even with the stuff with my parents, or for myself, that I deal with self doubt. That's the thing. That's my biggest weakness is self doubt. What's keep me motivated and resilient is the fact that I've been very blessed with some of the gifts that God's given me. When it comes to one playing music, I'm self trained. My nanny, from my mom's side, the Italian side, she was the choir director of family's church. My grandpa owns a guitar shop. I come from a family of musicians, but also I've been very blessed with the ability of having good retention skills. And I've always said I've always wanted to be two things in my life, Rob. I either wanted to be a traveling musician or be the next Jim Ross. Those were always the two main things I wanted to do
Good
for
old
myself.
JR.
So honestly, what's kept me going is that I feel like I have a bigger purpose here, and I feel like I could showcase my talents on a bigger platform. And I have a lot of time in front of me, and there's a lot of things that I need to see through. So I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I'm not attached to any drama anymore. What's keeping me whole is the fact that, yeah, I'm having a fun time rediscovering myself. I have a nice career that I've been able to fund on my own, covering professional wrestling without having a blue check mark, and like I'm very proud of the stuff that I've been able to accomplish despite that. I don't have all the connections in the world. I don't have this and that. What I do have is drive. I feel like I'm good at what I do with my craft, whether it's the podcast or my transcripts. And I just know that whoever comes with, whether I get married one day, whether I have kids, et cetera, none of it matters if I'm not tapped into who I am and loving myself first. So, you know, that's really the biggest thing that's keeping me motivated.
That's cool, man. I love how you said that you have drive. That stuff is beautiful. To hear and um, like you said, like two things you want it to be. It's either a traveling musician, and it's kind of similar to what I wanted. I always wanted to be an entertainer. Michael Jackson was my favorite artist of all time, always will be. And I think we mentioned him in the first podcast. I'm not too sure if we did, but I know I remember speaking to you about him at some point. And Michael, you know, when he got on that stage, he was a whole different person.
Right.
Watching him entertain and watching him um, do the things that he did, I grew up watching it, and I said to myself, I want to do the same thing. I want to entertain. And it's so crazy. You mentioned that you want it to be two things. You want it to be either traveling musician or the next Jim Ross. And for those of you who don't know who Jim Ross is to me, no disrespect to Michael Cole. Michael Cole, they say, is the voice of WWE, and I think Michael Cole is great at what he does. But I think that Jim Ross, good old JR, is the voice of wrestling. JR was known for his work at WWE as talent relations and also on the microphone, on the headset, actually, almost every WWE event with Jerry the King Lawler during the Attitude Era, during the Federation years. Now he's with AEW. And, JR is always going to be remembered for his legacy. And, when it came to me, there was a few things I wanted to be. But I knew I always wanted to be an entertainer. I always wanted to entertain somehow, whether it was professional wrestling or it was playing baseball or it was being an artist, a music artist. I wasn't able to become any of those things. And then I try to give it a shot with probably being a director. I always said to people, I kind of have a creative mind. I knew I had a creative mind since I was a child.
Right.
My imagination was crazy. I was one of those kids that, people used to call me like Harry Potter and Dexter's Laboratory and all these. Like, Rob, your mind is creative as hell. And I was like, listen, man, I don't know where it comes from. I guess watching too much TV, but
Right.
I wanted to be a composer. I wanted to compose music. I still want to compose music. Josh, I'm not sure if you ever thought about it this way, but Roman Reigns has one of the greatest entrance themes in professional wrestling. I think it's one of the greatest themes. I love a lot of music themes. Triple H's theme was one of my favorites, but Roman Reigns, that theme that he has now, beautiful. And I hope he never gets rid of it. I know he's not champion anymore, and I know it's going to be a little different because he got that theme during his tenure being champion, being
Right.
the tribal chief. But I hope he never gets rid of it because it's the perfect song for him. And, there's a part where the song, transitions and a violin comes out. And just the way that violin is played, I always think to myself, man, if I could just be on a stage one day, just, composing that segment, how beautiful would it be,
Yeah.
And, oh, man, I could get into it, and never shut up about it. But, it's beautiful to dream. It's beautiful to have, because sometimes you ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I've heard kids in the past say they don't know. And I've also heard kids say a lot of things. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a musician. I want to be a rapper. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be president, right?
Right.
But I think it's beautiful when a child can dream, because it just shows you that they already feel like they have a purpose in life at a very young age, and having a purpose in life is very, very important. So, thanks for that answer. Moving on, I have a few more questions to ask you.
No problem.
And I wanted to ask, could you share a pivotal moment or realization when that it has propelled you to move forward on your path to resilience?
Oh man. I think honestly, I think it's probably towards the end of my high school run because that's really when it's part of my French here, but that's really when the shit was hitting the fan at home. Um, so my parents got divorced my junior year of high school, and it was really a big transitional period for me because that's really usually like 17 and 18. That's where you start like you have to get that big advice about becoming a man and stuff like that, and it's just that's probably the darkest part of my life that I could recall right now is that time period because on one end I was doing very very good on music stuff. I was first in my class when it came to like performances and stuff, and we were participating all over the city of Chicago at these different events. I was in the all city jazz band. We had a my school that I went to, Rana College Prep, got invited to participate in the National High School Jazz Festival, and I went there my junior year, and we finished fifth out of 200 bands. And I was on a roll, man. I really felt like what I was doing well on the music side was going to help me escape Chicago, escape the shit that I was going through. And then once that happened, I was really at a point of I don't know what's next for me. And I have to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Alex Velasquez, that I met a while back, and he reached out to me and said, like, "Hey, man, even if the music stuff doesn't work out, you can still invest yourself into wrestling. You know all the moves. You have a good voice. You can make it work. You're not." Pause here, but he's like, it's not like somebody would put like a paper bag over you. You're not an ugly looking guy or whatever, right? You know what I mean? So, like, why not go to the broadcasting school? There's a broadcasting school right around the corner. I was originally going to go to Columbia College, but they wanted me to pay like $60,000 before I started taking my major music classes because that was the degree I was going to go for. And I didn't have the money for it at the time. Just being honest, this is what happens when your parents are in the middle of a divorce, you know. And I went to this. Alex told me he was going to the school called the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, now known as the Illinois Media School, and really that time period from 2013 to 2014, I just went into full tunnel vision mode, and that's really what's really helped me get me to where I am now professionally, is knowing that even when you're at rock bottom, you have control in how your future lies in front of you. Um, I don't believe in. I have faith in God, but I don't always have to reach on Him and expect Him to give me a handout. And that's just how I am. It's different for other people, but I don't expect a lot of things from a lot of people. I need to go out there and earn it and go about it. So, you know, honestly, not only just resilience, Rob, going into that venture, going into broadcasting, helped me get out of an external shell that I kept myself in for a long time because I dealt with bullying in elementary school and stuff like that, and I kind of hid behind my guitar when I was in high school. I didn't. I was how we talk. I'm like that with people that were cool to me, but you know this. I'm big on reciprocal energy, so I didn't open myself at that much. I had no faith in myself. My family was being torn apart. I had nothing to look forward to. So again, here you go. You got people labeling you blah 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 blah, yada yada yada. And kind of like with this transformation journey, it was another part of my life where I need to change my mindset and go after something that makes me happy. So a lot of years, my mom would be like, "Oh, how do you expect to be the next Jim Ross if you're so shy and you don't say anything?" Well, I finished first in my broadcasting class at my broadcasting school, and Jim Ross was a former guest on my old radio show back then.
Wow, that's amazing, man. Love that.
Yep,
I love that.
good old Jr.
Yeah. It's beautiful, man. It's like, just hearing your journey, everything you've been through in life, hearing everything, that you've been sharing on this episode. It's like sometimes you say to yourself, man, like, you think you got it bad. You don't know who's got it worse than you. And, one thing I admire about you, Josh, is that despite what you went through in life, you chose the same route that I did. I'm not going to be mad at the world. I'm not going to blame anyone. I'm not going to point the finger at anyone about anything. And I'm also not going to take out my frustration out on the world, because you know what they say? They say that hurt people hurt people. And they say that if you never healed, you're going to continue to bleed on others.
Yeah.
And that's things that I've been through. That's, people have bled on me. People have hurt me. I've hurt people back. I've bled on people. This last relationship that I was in, no disrespect to my ex-girlfriend, because I love her to death, but she needed and still needs a lot of healing. She was in the military. I don't know what she endured when she was out there. She was female in the military, and I know that sometimes women are not treated the best in the military because it's like a man thing. And what her and her twin sister went through in the military, I probably will never know. I never really got the chance to get into it with her about how the military treated her.
Right.
A lot of our conversations were surface level because, again, we were still getting to know each other. But I could just imagine, But all I know is by the time I met her, she was tough. She was a tough woman. And in my opinion, very emotionally avoidant. And I've always wanted to know why. What's the reason behind that? And who knows? We're not on speaking terms right now, but maybe someday we will be. And because, we didn't end on bad terms. But hopefully someday, if we ever do talk again, we can talk about these type of conversations. Um,
Rob, like honestly, like obviously I've been very deep with my answers so far, but also along the way, I hope you've been noticing that I've been holding myself accountable with the fact that I was shy, recluse, um, not having the ability to trust a lot of people. There's a lot of things that I'm not proud of during my journey. I wish that I wasn't as recluse as I was. I wish I wasn't as unwilling to trust people or let people in, and I had to hold myself accountable in a long way too, because like I could have just went and done the same thing my parents did, and just act like a cloud chaser and paranoid and et cetera. But I didn't want that to be a representation of me.
that's very important. It's very, very important. And I appreciate you talking about taking accountability. Accountability is something that a lot of us have an issue with. Accountability. I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't know what taking accountability was until, I don't know, 2018, 2019, when somebody first brought that up to my attention and said, "Oh, you're not taking accountability. You're not taking accountability." And I said to myself, I always hear this word accountability, but what does it mean? And then one day I look it up and I'm like, what? I know what this is. How come I just didn't know what the word was? And ever since then, all I've been wanting to is take accountability. Because after also listening and hearing people and remembering things that people said to me about things that I was doing, I said to myself, I wasn't taking accountability. I
Yeah.
wasn't taking accountability. How do I take accountability now? This recent relationship that I was in, I thought that my ex-girlfriend got the best version of Rob Aurelius that anyone's ever gotten, because I felt like I took 3 years to heal from my previous relationship. I took 3 years for self-discovery, to hold myself accountable for things that I once did, to unlearn toxic cycles and toxic traits and all that stuff, and then try to become a different person. And mainly say to myself, don't do to people what you don't want to be done to you.
Right.
And one thing about accountability is, if there's an issue where you and this, let's say, for example, you and a significant other of yours, or just a relative friend, whatever, get into an argument,
Right.
there's constant blaming. But we fail to realize that we didn't hold ourselves accountable for what we could have done better to avoid the drama, to avoid the conflict. Once you kind of know how to take accountability, I feel like it's very freeing. I feel like it's something that you want to pat yourself on the back about. You feel pretty good about yourself. When my ex and I broke up, we already had discussed a million reasons why we weren't compatible at the moment to continue this relationship. And then I started to realize some of the things that I had done, and even some of the things that she brought to my attention that I didn't even realize I was doing. And I said, "Oh wow, I didn't know that I had done this, or I had said that, or that my actions made her feel a certain way." And I apologized to her right away. And I remember one of the last conversations I had with her, and this is actually before we actually broke up. I started the conversation by saying to her, "Hey, I just wanted to take this time to apologize to you for ever making you feel not safe around me, for ever feeling like you wasn't heard, you wasn't seen, you wasn't being reciprocated, you wasn't being this, you wasn't being that." And she sat there and she said to me, "I appreciate that, but you don't have to apologize, because you didn't really do any of those things to me." And I said, "Well, I just want to take accountability regardless of what I may have not done. And I felt good about it. And, accountability to me, Josh, has a lot to do with growth. The more you grow, the more you evolve, the more you hold yourself accountable.
Right.
It's no longer people holding you accountable, you're holding yourself accountable. So my next question has to do with resilience again. But actually, it's not really. Well, it is a question. But I wanted to ask you. We were talking about toxicity earlier. Um, what advice would you give to others who may be facing similar struggles with toxic relationships or embarking on their own journey of self improvement?
Well, I'll make this brief, and it's really, really, really simple. At the end of the day, if you're finding yourself in this situation of toxicity, like, don't take out the venom that you're festering inside of you out on other people that don't deserve it, because that's where it starts there. Two is also, like we said, holding yourself accountable of what you're doing, and like I mentioned earlier, you got to have self-respect. And I know that's not easy concepts to employ at times, because there's a lot of people that walk around with pride, and there's a lot of people that have egos and stuff like that, and they are kind of in denial of what things are. But from my experience, is that when I've been able to forgive myself when I'm in these type of situations, whether people did me wrong or this situation with the last girl that I was talking to, I'm not allowing that to be a reflection of who I am as a human being. What other people do to me is not who I am, you know. And that's something that you guys have to remind yourself when you're forgiving yourself. You are not responsible for what other people do to you. It's it's very true. And if there's something that you need to be accountable for, do it. Don't put a blind eye to it. Actually be accountable for it. But if you're finding yourself in a position where people are attacking your character when they have no reason to, when they're in the wrong, when you're applying context to what the situation is, then you need to realize that you need to take a step back. And like you were telling me, Rob, limit your communication with them, you know.
I appreciate that. Um, this next question that I wanted to ask you, this one does have a lot to do with resilience. And I think it's a very important question that I came up with that I said to myself, I want to talk as much about resilience and see where his head is at when it comes to resilience. So this next question is how have our conversations about resilience influenced your perspective on resilience? And how do you apply it? How do you apply its principles to your life?
I think if anything, it's validated what I know about resilience and knowing the drive and work ethic that we both have, even though we do different things professionally. I just think the way we carry ourselves has validated the process that we go with what we're doing, you know? And for me, resilience could be testing at times, you know. uh, People are try to test your regard. Sometimes maybe you yourself are testing your regard and what you can do and what you can't push through and what you're willing to do even if you're tired, exhausted, overwhelmed, etc., etc. I work in the wrestling media. Now, am I on the total pole of a Sean Ross Sapp and a Mike Johnson and a blah 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 blah? No, but I'm putting just about or more times more work than those guys because I'm not doing rumors and innuendos. I'm doing these play-by-play articles for these TV shows every single week, and I had to challenge myself to make sure to keep going because I need people to realize that I bring something authentic in a realm of media that deals with a lot of rumor and innuendo, a lot of BS, and a lot of misleading the audience. And I take a lot of pride in a lot of work that I do. And knowing how you are about your work and our conversations that we've had each other, I see that with myself and how I go about my transcripts, you know? And really, it's been a blessing in a lot of ways. Just think about our conversations, and it's just showing me that we're both on the right track as far as where our mindset is with resilience and being able to adapt, like we were talking about last week, regardless of what life throws at us, we're able to adapt with those curveballs along the way.
Like that.
Mhm.
Um, you know, um, I remember when I first said to you, Josh, I don't know what to call this podcast. What should we call it? And I said to myself, what are we going to call it? And then for some reason, the word resilience was just on my mind. And then finally, I said to you, Josh, what about if we call it the Resilient Podcast, right? And you said, oh, I love that. And I remember sharing it with other people. I was like, hey, I finally came up with the name. It's going to be called the Resilient Podcast. And people are like, wow, what do you know about resilience? Well, I know a lot about resilience. So my next question to you is, looking ahead, and what are you most excited about regarding your continued growth and the future of the Resilience Podcast?
Well, as regards to the podcast is concerned, I'm excited to see where this can grow as far as not just like numbers or whatever we could get in return from this project, but more of the conversations that we could have on the show and, just building the bond between us along the way. That's what I'm really excited for, especially with this being a new project. So I'm very excited for that end, to be honest with you. But in regards to myself, I'm very excited for this next chapter of my life. I'm very excited to see what comes out of it from my heart by the time I do move to excuse me, by the time I do move to Florida. Um, but also once I reach my goal of what I'm shooting for as far as my weight loss journey is going for. So right now, my end goal is to get down to 205. That's my goal, and I put this out on social media the other day. But I've been down 117 pounds since last May. So
I saw that. Congratulations, man.
and you guys can scroll down my Josh Lopez YouTube page, so you kind of can see the difference in me along this path. And I'm very excited to see how I feel within my heart once I reach that goal and going from there. As far as the stuff with my wrestling stuff, I'm leaving it up to God's hands. I do feel in my heart that a door is going to open for me. And I know there'll be a time where I'll earn the opportunity to be in these press boxes and stuff like that and having media credentials. But I'm leaving it up to God's hands at this point. So I'm excited for everything. But what's really going to matter is how I feel about myself once I reach those destinations. How do I see myself once I reach what I'm shooting for?
Amen. I really like that. And in regards to your journey, I do want to say that I haven't seen you since April 2022. It's been a long time. 2 years now, to be exact, was the last time I saw you, and that was in Dallas, Texas. And I was really sad after that, because I had a very good time with you. And if you guys go deep into my pictures from WrestleMania 2022 in Dallas, you'll see a lot of pictures of me and Josh. And I know that it was special to Josh as well, us spending time together, because there was even a few times that Josh, his profile picture was me and him. There's a very nice photo of Josh and I out there at an announce table calling a WrestleMania match. And I did terrible. I even have the video to prove it how terrible I did. I treated it like, I don't know. But Josh was so good. And when I watched that video again, I said to myself, damn, this guy knows what he does. What he's supposed to do. And, earlier when you mentioned, I wanted to be the next Jim Ross, I said to myself, he's got it in him. He's got the grit. And, we called our first WrestleMania match. It was at the WrestleMania Access out in Dallas, Texas at the convention center, and we were calling that match with John Cena and The Rock, where The Rock beat John Cena for the first time,
Right.
and it was in Florida where this match happened. And Cena was able to eventually come back a year later and beat The Rock, but this time beat him for the WWE championship. And I remember Cena's promo leading up to that. He spoke about, um, he spoke about resilience. He spoke about falling short and losing to The Rock, and a lot of things affected him. His personal life, his marriage was, he got a divorce. He went through so many things. I'm not sure if you remember the song to that promo, Josh. "Letters from the Sky" from Civil Twilight. One of my favorite songs of all time. A song that it kind of resonates with me a lot these days, for obvious reasons. But what I do want to say is, I remember the last time I saw you. Um, I had a very good time with you, and I saw your photos, and sometimes when I looked into the photos, and this is probably the first time I share this with you, so I don't want to catch you off guard, but
Yeah.
I noticed in those photos that even though you was having a great time with me, you didn't seem whole. You didn't seem happy. You didn't seem like you was in a good place mentally, spiritually, emotionally. But ever since then, especially with this new journey of yours, I've noticed a lot of changes. I've noticed some glow that I never saw before. I noticed that your hair is growing much different, and it looks more fuller and more healthier. Your skin looks great, and your energy levels are definitely much different than last time. So I'm very very happy that you are making these changes. Very very happy. And people always say gut health is equivalent to your mental health. If your gut health is not good, your mental health is going to be shot. And I know how that feels, because all the times that I've ate junk food, whether it's been McDonald's, Burger King, Popeyes, Wendy's, KFC, freaking Domino's, the list
Right.
goes on and on and on. I noticed I haven't felt my best. I noticed that I've been confused, brain fog, tiredness, IBS,
Right.
all these things. And it's true. It's true. Take care of your gut health, and your mental health will be much better. Get more sleep, drink more water. And I know you drink a lot of water these days, and I'm proud of you, man. And, you inspire me, Josh. You really do, because I also want to start my own journey. I'm going through some health situations right now, and Josh, you know exactly what I'm going through. And my doctors have said to me that what I'm going through right now is reversible, and it would just have to require a change in diet, drink more water, get more sleep, and exercise.
Right.
So, when Josh popped up with his journey story, I was like, I speak to him all the time, and I started to notice a little bit of change, and I thought my eyes were tricking me, but I was like, you know what? He's confirmed that he's actually losing weight. He's going through a lot of stuff, and 100-something pounds is a lot, man. It's a lot. Cheers to the next 100.
Yeah.
And man, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy to hear you one day on this podcast tell people that you lost 200 pounds. It's going to be mind blowing, right? And like I said, man, I'm really proud of you, man. And in regards to that, my final question is, if you could sum up your current mindset and outlook on life in one word, what would it be and why?
Undeniable. To steal a term from Cody Rhodes, it's being undeniable. And it's also, like I mentioned earlier, with The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, it's being undeniable. I am in this process of this transformation journey. I am reshaping how I see myself, and I'm putting myself in a position where people will not deny what I am, what I can offer to them, how I see myself, more importantly, and what I can and cannot accomplish. I'm not putting myself in a position where somebody's going to choose another person over me because of the way I look, or where I come from, or for I'm young. Like, for example, I've had multiple job interviews here in the city of Chicago for radio stations, and I've been passed over multiple times because of what my age is. and politics. And, there's a lot of ageism when it comes to sports radio here in Chicago. If you look at the on air hosts and producers, the average age is 42 years old. And I've had program directors at both stations tell me I'm more than qualified to work as a producer at these stations. And I've had 7 interviews between both stations of ESPN 1000 and 670 The Score, which is the CBS station here.
Mhm.
And it's all been for the same position. Now tell me what's missing here. Same position, multiple interviews at both stations, which is not easy in this market, and telling me that I'm more than qualified to be at a place.
Wow.
Tell me what it is. And if it's just the way I look, I'm gonna make you look silly for it at the end of the day when that door does open, wherever that is. And really, I'm and this thing with Lauren is really also taught me that I need to be undeniable for myself too on that end as well. So
I love that, man. Yeah, and I know what it feels like to be told that you're overqualified, and I'll never understand that. And I also understand the politics and things. Sometimes when people hear somebody say, "Oh, what happened with that? Why did that happen?" Oh, for political reasons. And sometimes people think you're actually referring to politics, like who's the president and whatnot. Politics is just a term that means that things are just, sometimes in favoritism of other things and this and that and whatnot. And there's a lot of butt kissing and a lot of people pleasing and a lot of extra shenanigans that are no reason. And I don't like politics. I really don't.
right,
Um, Hopefully someday you could beat those odds, or hopefully someday you could rise above all that hate, all that drama, all that unnecessary nonsense, and defeat your enemies with success. Um, this has been a very good interview with Josh. A little longer than I expected, but I'm glad that I was able to have this conversation with you. I was glad to ask you these questions. I think they were very important. And I hope that these answers that you gave in this interview can help someone out there, several people. We're coming to an end with this podcast episode. And I just wanted to say that, again, like I said earlier, I feel like I hit the jackpot with Josh, to help me host the Resilience podcast. I'll be honest, the Resilience podcast may have been my vision, my idea, but Josh was part of that seed planting, and Josh is part of he's one of the gardeners with me, planting those seeds, and planting it to become that tree that we want it to become, and I'm very fortunate to have you as a friend. I'm very fortunate to have you in my life. Sometimes I doubt myself, and that's normal. Sometimes I find myself doubtful of a lot of things and not certain of certain things. But I sometimes when I feel that way, I find myself calling you, and reaching out to you. And I've done this a lot, in the last few years. I've called you a few times, every few months, just to check in, just to inform you of what I'm going through, just to talk to you about something, talk to you about wrestling or this and that and whatnot.
right,
Something, you're a very level-headed person, so I can have a conversation with you and not feel like you made things about yourself when I reached out to have a listening ear. And I can share something with you. And even if you and I don't necessarily agree with the same topic, we can agree to disagree and we respect one another. For example, this morning, first thing I did was I reached out to you and told you about a segment that I saw from the Usos, a segment that I actually missed, and I still haven't seen the full segment. And it was just a little bit, that little clip that I saw of the Usos talking to each other, Jay actually telling Jimmy that he missed him and this and that, and then Jimmy also explaining to him, listen, I've always been here. I've never left, but you went on and became main event Jey Uso and stuff like that. Such a beautiful story. And I remember telling you, man, I wish that their storyline was bigger and I wish that their match was better at WrestleMania. You said to me you was happy with that. And that's completely fine. I'm a marketing guy. I'm a guy that's always, I'm behind the scenes. And, I'm very, what's the word that I can use here? I'm very exotic with a lot of things. And, sometimes I'm just not too satisfied and content with certain things. And with that being said, I just hope that at some point, at some time, because I know this bloodline storyline is shifting somewhere else at some point. Jimmy and Jay could have another match, and maybe this is the match where they actually shake hands and hug each other and say, "Listen, we're twins, for God's sakes. Let's not be enemies anymore. Let's actually, go back up, our cousin Roman or wherever direction is that the bloodline is going. Because right now we don't know what the hell is going on. There's a lot going on. Solo's taking over. Paul Heyman just had a badass Hall of Fame induction ceremony speech, and now Paul Heyman's like, scared for his life these days. It's crazy to see Heyman, the wise man, in that position. This was a great episode. And these are the type of questions that Josh and I are going to be asking people in the next episodes to come. Josh, before we leave, what's your message to the world?
My message to the world this week is to stay strong and remember, folks, that we only get one day at a time. I know it's very easy to be overwhelmed with things and try to rush results with things and expectations for people, and we're only guaranteed one day at a time. And really think about the things that you're dying on a hill over. Really think about that. And I'm not naive, man. We all go through stuff. This is not life or death. It's not the end of the world with some of the things that we lose our minds over. So you don't have to die over every hill. And just remember to take one day at a time.
Appreciate that. I want to share something. And, for every episode that we have, Josh and I are always going to share something at the end with the world, our message to the world. And when we have a guest on the show, we will always be asking that guest, what is their message to the world? My message to the world today is more like advice. And here's my advice. Hug everyone you love a lot tighter. Never leave someone in an argument. Be present. Say I love you more. Take a lot of pictures with the ones you love. You know that you never know when it will be the last time you see them.
Right.
Please don't take any second for granted. And that's my message to the world today. So, folks, it's been great. Josh, thanks so much for your time. Can't wait to hear this episode. It's going to be great. And folks, there might be some slight changes to the podcast in the upcoming weeks. I've been hearing a lot of my friends and associates reaching out saying to me, I can't find your podcast. I can't find your podcast. And the reason for that is because we are called the Resilience Podcast. And, upon my research, I realized that there's about 3 other podcasts out there that kind of use the same name in different ways. Like there's the Resilience Academy or something like that. And then there's another Resilience podcast that's called Junk Something. So we might be switching over to the Resilient Podcast, not Resilience, but Resilient, because the name of our social media handles is the Resilient Pod. So don't be surprised if you see the change to the Resilient Podcast. And again, you'll still be able to find us in the same place. We're not going anywhere. You'll still be able to find us on social media. Our hashtag may change, but it's going to become the Resilient Podcast, and it's not going to be that much of a difference. So don't be discouraged. So this concludes our second episode. It was a very lengthy episode, and I think it was lengthy for a reason. I needed to hear Josh's insights on things, and I wanted people to also be able to experience that as well too. So don't forget to follow us at the Resilient Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. On Facebook, just go to arcgmedia.com and you'll be able to see information about the Resilient Pod on there. And also on our website, arcgmedia.com, just go on the website, go into the column section, click on the Resilience Podcast, and it'll take you straight to this video that we just shot today. And all previous videos and videos for the future. And also, you can find this on all the other, podcast platforms. And Josh, you can share them with everyone now. So you can find this on.
You can get us up on Spotify, what? Apple Podcasts, what? Amazon Music, what? Type in Resilient Pod once that transition comes in, and like Rob said, and our other links is going to help you along the way. By the way, if you guys want to check out my work, you can check out my transcripts at wrestlingheadlines.com in the results section. I also have the Hoots podcast, which I'm recording tomorrow, episode 410. So we'll be doing that, previewing the upcoming WWE draft. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. And you can follow me at on Twitter at Josh Silva's Media. Also, if you want to find stuff for the podcast and my personal page, follow me at the Hoots Podcast. Instagram is at Josh Lopez Music, and I've been going through a roll call of these songs coming from Taylor Swift's new album. So hope you guys check out the guitar covers. I have 20 years of experience playing guitar, and hopefully it comes through these covers. So.
Yeah, and listen, you can find me and ARCG Media at Rob Aurelius, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Same thing for ARCG. No TikTok, but Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or our website, like I mentioned before, arcgmedia.com. This is Rob Aurelius, my co-host, Joshie Lopez. It's been great. Episode 2 is now in the books. I appreciate you all, and we'll talk soon. For now, peace.